So, great to hear your voice again, Nigar.
Same.
We were meaning to do this podcast a few days ago, but then everything went crazy,
Yeah.
and developments happened that we never could have imagined. I mean, what's your take on what's happening now and where things are going?
Well, what a day this year has been is my take on it. Obviously, things have happened in ways that none of us could have predicted or imagined. And right now, emotions are still high, even though now they're more, I would assume, more positive on the Azeri side overall and more negative on the Armenian side. Um, but at least the good thing is that the bloodshed is over. No more people have to die in this conflict anymore, and that's definitely something that makes me at least somewhat happy.
So we still don't really know where this is going. We know a few of the rough points, etc. But there is this issue of trying to build bridges between people again, and you've been involved in this in the past.
Yeah.
So I wondered. I mean, it now might even be harder because of the new emotions that have
Right.
been uh, uh, aroused. But what do you think should be the next step?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. And honestly, I don't consider myself any type of expert. I think the reason why we wanted to do this interview is that my voice would be more representative of maybe like the general population of Azerbaijan. Yes, I do have some experience in peace building, but nowhere near other people who have been doing this for decades. And from my memory and just general take on it, back then when we were going to those seminars 10, 12 years ago, our goal was to reintroduce each other. I mean, because it was mostly with young people who have never seen Azeris or Armenians, who've only mostly heard bad things about each other, and those seminars were all about just humanizing each other. I mean, just putting a face on an ethnicity and showing the other sides, those that they're not exposed to because they've just never met each other. I mean, for Azeris it's a little different. Yes, we still have some Armenians living in Azerbaijan, and some of them are our friends, but and like I said, I'm definitely not a professional, or an expert in peace building. There are people who have been doing it for decades or at least a few years consistently. I've only done it for a few years, back in early 2000s, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me, and I honestly wish that more population on both sides did that. The seminars that I went to, of course, all of them were in Georgia, and they involved people from both sides, from Azerbaijan and Armenia. A lot of them were aimed at younger people, which I think is even more important because those were the kids who have never seen people from the other side. You could see the fear in their eyes and mistrust in their eyes when they met each other, and then a day or two later, of course, they got to know each other and realized that, well, we're all human. So it was pretty much about familiarizing people with each other, right? Putting a face on the ethnicity and rehumanizing it, if you want to put it that way. Um, and I do think that those are possible, and there should be more of that. There were people who did, of course, a lot more brave initiatives, right? Like, for example, our friend Georgi Vanyan. I mean, he did Turkish Film Festival in Armenia, and I believe he even attempted Azerbaijani Film Festival there. And things that he did were also coming from the place of, remembering the times before the war. You know what I mean? And having his own take on the reasons of the conflict. From our conversations, all conversations that I've had with him, what he says is he believes that it was all, and basically the what's it called? I forgot the word in English. It was KGB standing behind it, and they needed to pit those two nations against each other to continue to divide and conquer the region, which I would agree with them. Of course, we probably will never know, but the way things unfolded back then were very interesting. But like I said, those there are so many different possibilities when it comes to peace building. But I think, depending on how things go from now on, I would love to see more grassroots initiatives. Hopefully, they will be allowed freedom to do so, because after all, it's the people who have to live with each other, especially people in Karabakh and near Karabakh. And those people should be finding ways to, should be finding common ground and ways to coexist.
So it's interesting. I mean, I lived in Armenia for a while, so I know that Armenians were always scared of Azerbaijanis, but I
Mhm.
don't know how many Armenians understand that the feeling might be mutual. Was it? Do you think that many Azerbaijanis were also kind of scared or
Mhm.
intimidated by the idea of meeting Armenians?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I hear a lot from, or see at least from Armenian social media users, that they call it hatred of Armenians, but I've always believed, and I still believe, that it's not just hatred. It's not just based on ethnicity out of nowhere. It's fear, right? All of these tensions, they come from fear. So what Azeris are feeling towards Armenians are, for the most part, is fear. And there's also, I know that a lot of Azeris feel cheated and feel humiliated after the first war, because a lot of them, they had Armenian friends, and they thought that things were fine, and then all of a sudden things just happened 0 to 100. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this will go away easily. I do think that a lot of it will depend on government policies, because I do agree that in the past 3 decades, not much has been done to humanize the other side, to open room for dialogue. Those peace building activities wasn't exactly something we were announcing on every corner, because you kind of had to be careful with those things. Unless it's government officiated, it's a little bit of a gray area.
Yeah, certainly one hopes that if the two governments now have signed something, which they have,
Yeah.
that they would be interested in allowing this to now happen for the future
Right.
development of relations and so on. You
Right.
mentioned Georgi Vanyan, and you mentioned about the film festivals. He also did he also brought over Azerbaijani writer and others to Yerevan. They met with
Hmm.
kids in a school and so forth. And culture has always been part of his work. I think he was a theatrical director or something, right? You also kind of are very interested in culture. Do you think culture has a role to play in peace building as well?
Absolutely. I absolutely think that culture plays a great role, because that's the medium that reaches the most people. I mean, there are people, yes, there are people who believe their government and they will follow the direction, but there are also those who not necessarily believe in that. And overall, if you want to appeal to the masses, culture is the most important way to do that. Um, for example, there are a few great ways to do it. And I think you and I spoke about The Act of Killing, which is a documentary by Joshua Oppenheimer. I think it was made in 2012, and to me personally, it's one of the best pieces. It's probably the best documentary I've ever seen. It stayed with me even though I watched it when it came out 8 years ago. But the whole premise of it is built on theater of the oppressed, which is Boad's method. Um, and it's a great exercise for empathy. I don't know if you did you have a chance to watch the film?
No, unfortunately, I totally forgot. I'm sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry, but when you have a
But
chance,
now
I
you've reminded
definitely
me.
yeah, I definitely recommend it, and I recommend it to so many people, whether or not they come from a conflict zone, because empathy is key, and this film does something to you because basically the synopsis is Oppenheimer he went to Indonesia where in mid 60s there was a mass killing of let's say members of the communist parties or even presumed members of the communist party, and of course a lot of it was just ethnic Chinese people who may or may not have been part of the party, but it ended up in basically a genocide, and the perpetrators of those mass killings were have been heroes, right, in Indonesia. And Oppenheimer went there. His Indonesian crew has remained anonymous. That's how dangerous that job was. But he went there, he found those heroes, right, quote unquote, and he told them that, hey, I want to make a movie about you guys, how you were killing those Chinese, but here's what we're gonna do, right? Half of you are gonna play yourselves, and the other half is gonna play the Chinese that you were killing. And the entire movie, and it's 2.5 hours, it shows how they're reenacting, and they didn't spare effort. Right? They actually built those little villages that they were burning, and brought there were no actors, I believe it was all locals who were part of the crowd and all that. um, but he filmed in detail the tortures, right, that they did, the waterboarding, this and that, and those perpetrators had to actually walk in the shoes of the people that they killed. And watching that at first, you're kind of like, oh, these guys, they're just savages. And you know how we're used to thinking of other people like, oh, it's probably cultural. It's probably just how they are, how this ethnicity is. But it's not the case. I mean, any nation is the way it is because of how it was brought up. Same way a child is not born with hatred, right? They learn, it's a learned behavior. And I'm not going to give away the ending of that documentary because I still hope that you'll watch it. But that ending is one of the best things that I've ever seen, and it really, really shows human nature and what we allow ourselves to believe, and how we forgive our own faults and justify our own faults at the expense of empathy. So that, I think, is something that we need more, and that should be beyond government initiatives. That should be something that people decide to do. I don't think there can be any peace unless the people of Armenia and the people of Azerbaijan decide to be the kinds of societies that cooperate and try to build peace together.
Hmm. So it was interesting what you said about empathy because I think not a lot of people, many people have said there is no empathy. There's been a lack of empathy on both sides. It's only been
Yeah,
what is happening to us, not to you,
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and um, one of the other problems, though, is that especially with culture, although not with regards to your example, there Armenians. I don't know how you feel about me saying this, but in many cases, Armenians and Azerbaijanis share a lot in common in terms of culture,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and that leads to these rivalries and fights and arguments over who did
Hmm.
this, who took this, who took
I
that.
know we call
How
it the Dolma Wars.
the Doma wars, yeah, like the
Yeah,
hummus wars that the Israelis and Palestinians have. So
exactly.
how do we get over things like that?
I mean, that's a very good question. Again, I'm no expert, but I'm also pretty sure we're not the first societies to deal with something like that. For ages now, different society, Puerto Ricans and Dominicans still can't share mofongo, or same with, like you brought up, Israelis and Arabs still can't share hummus and other things. And the thing is, maybe if we all stop claiming things as our own and just accept that long before we were all born, things were shared and things were brought through, the trade paths, right, through the Silk Way. They were taken all the way from here to there, and Indians have a lot of Persian influence, and Persians have a lot of this influence. Are we all consist of different particles that the humanity, and especially our geographical location, has brought to us. I mean, I don't care who created dolma. I care that it's very tasty. And if we need to create, I don't know, Southern Caucasus cuisine and include it there, so be it. I mean, I look at Armenian restaurants in LA, and most of them have a whole selection of Arab cuisine. And that's just how it is. Wherever we live, we create things. Yes, there are different variations, and Azeris are very prideful of, their regionally specific cuisines. I'm sure Armenians are too, and Georgians are too, and Persians are too. But um, we can't have those conversations that we will never find the answer who made Dolma, who created Dolma. I mean, there was no copyright back then. There was no patent back then. We will never know. So the the choice that we have here is we either choose to continue this or to move on. I mean, it's okay if we share some similar music. It's okay if we share some similar dishes, as long as our common goal, is to strengthen our region and to cooperate and become different types of societies. Then those are the compromises that we can definitely agree on.
I remember from about 9 years ago, Adnan Hajizadeh, he
Mhm.
tweeted out a saying from an Azerbaijani writer and translated into English. It was "Dolma belongs to the person who eats it. Sarigelen belongs to the person who sings it," which I thought was just a lovely way of actually
Absolutely.
summing this up.
Absolutely.
Um, you are also engaging with people on social media. What about the role of social media in communication, especially in these days of pandemic when people to people contact is even more
Yeah.
difficult than it ever was? Impossible, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a very, very important topic. I mean, um, I'm also, I think I realized the power of social media when it comes to societal division during the US elections in 2016, because it just brought up so much ugliness in people here. And to be honest with you, that thing with Russian trolls, I I wasn't surprised when that came out. I wouldn't be surprised if that had a hand in our conflict either. I don't generally think that what people show on social media, at least most people, what they show on social media reflects who they really are. Maybe their darkest moments, yes, and we all have them. We all have moments when we lack empathy. We all have moments when we say or think things that are not reflective of the people we want to be, right? We all have those dark little days. And I think social media is very unforgiving of that, because whatever you post on the internet stays on the internet. And a lot of times it actually affects someone's view of you or your people. Or right now, for example, one of our politicians, Ilgar Mamedov, he posted something about Zangezur being a historically Azeri land. And to me, it's just such an irrelevant, unnecessary, and I called it shit staring kind of comment, especially right now when that was never on the table. That's not something that should be talked about right now. I mean, we're just getting out of this whole mess. Let's not start another one right away, or ever. I mean, I think if we can collectively close the chapter, close the book of expansionist sentiments in our region, that will be the best thing we can do for each other. So let's just try to take care of the mess that is already there. And that's why social media is, it can be a great thing, right? It's this time, for example, unlike 1988, it allows us to actually communicate with the other side and see what's actually is going on and not rely on hearsay or rumors or Soviet newspapers, right? We can actually get information a lot faster, but the problem is we don't always know what information is reliable, and a lot of times it takes time to figure out what sources are reliable. But we are quick to jump into conclusions. So, I mean, social media is kind of public opinion on steroids, I would call that. Sorry.
I mean, I think it's interesting the example you gave because I saw that earlier, and of course I instantly see then Armenians will use that to basically say, look, you
Yeah.
see, all Azeris want to attack us, and it's only two tweets I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't know what the situation is, but please, let's not feed into each other's worst fears, which is what
Exactly.
really seems to be happening.
Yeah.
I also think social media is a great tool as well because also telephone lines aren't operating between Armenia and Azerbaijan, right?
Yeah.
And when you were in Baku and I was in Yerevan, we could connect in Skype 10 or 11 or whenever years it was. So these tools are there,
Yeah.
but these tools, as you point out, can be problematic as well. As you said, it's easier to be angry on social media and to get
Hmm.
spread widely than it is to convey a message of peace.
Yeah.
Um, I think I just would like to give you the last word to say whatever you might want to say about the current situation now, or how you hope it will progress, or what your concerns are. Anything you like.
Um, well, honestly, right now it's hard to tell. I think, I think it's also kind of soon to make any conclusions. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. There's, internal situation in Azerbaijan. I see a lot of people who are not necessarily happy with the outcome. They're not happy with the presence of Russian peace builders or whatever peacemakers right now, simply because they don't trust them, right? We've had that before. It did not turn into our favor, and a lot of Azeris are not happy with it. On the other hand, there's Armenia, of course, and everything we've witnessed yesterday, with people with this growing unrest. Thankfully, it seems like it's a little calmer today, but still, there's a lot of political issues that they're, they're going to figure out in the coming days, and um, decisions as a society that they're going to make. Right. So there's a few different scenarios in which this is going to go. And the only thing I can say is, I tend to be more of an idealist and an optimist, which is why I like to keep some pessimists and realists in my friends because I need them to keep me in check. But even with that, I still choose to believe in the best outcome. And I do think that the best outcome is possible. I think it's all a decision, right? Um, Peace doesn't just happen, right? No one's gonna come into the region and wave a magic wand and say, "Well, now you guys are friends and there's no problems at all anymore." Right? Peace is something that takes work, that takes dedication, that takes an open mind, and most importantly, it takes a decision, right? So that's why I keep saying that it's all about what we decide to be from now on. Do we want to be Azeris who, let's say, are gloating at Armenian deaths or joking about taking more land? Or do we want to be Azeris who are satisfied with the outcome, satisfied that at least majority of our IDPs can go back, right? And hopefully in the near future, the rest of them can go back. And maybe we want to choose to be a society that would like to speak of peace building, would like to leave the door open. Right now, on the other hand, Armenia, do they want to choose um, to take this as a yet another tragedy, right? A yet another blow, something to hold a grudge over, right? Or do they want to choose to let go as a society of any, historic expansionist sentiments, which I do understand where they come from. I don't understand ultra nationalists and the agenda that they push. I do believe that it has done nothing but harm to Armenia historically and continuously. Um, but Armenia also has the land that it has. And it's a beautiful land from what I hear. I hope one day I can visit. It has an amazing human potential, right? Both locally and internationally. And I do believe that Armenia can be so many great things if it only chooses to let go and become something else. Historically, we've all lost, right? There's not a single country in the world probably that hasn't lost things, that hasn't gone through terrible things. But things change once things have changed for them once they've decided to let go. Right? We have Germany, we have Japan, we have other countries that only exist in the shape that they exist today because of that decision. So my hope is that those two decisions, independent decisions of, Azeri society and Armenian society, they come together. They get on the same page and decide to be better societies for themselves and for the region, because we are a tiny, tiny place that most of the world doesn't know or doesn't care about. And the only way for us to have any sort of independence from Russia or Turkey or Iran, whatever it is if we build a strong union. Georgia is already there. It's been waiting for that. I mean, they've managed to keep good relations for the most part with both Armenia and Azerbaijan, but between us, we have a lot of work to do, and I really hope that we make the right decisions in the coming days and years.